In a world that never stops talking, silence has become rare, almost forgotten. Everyone is in a hurry to voice their opinions, to prove their worth through words, to fill every gap in conversation with something, anything, just to feel relevant. But here's the truth. The more you talk, the less you listen. And the less you listen, the less you truly understand. There's a reason why the wisest individuals in history were often the quietest in the room. They weren't in a rush to speak because they knew that real power doesn't come from volume. It comes from awareness. When you hold back, when you resist the urge to fill silence with empty noise, you create space. Space to think. Space to see what others miss in their desperate need to be heard. And in that space, you gain something most people never will. Clarity. The world conditions us to believe that we must always be asserting ourselves, that to be noticed, we must be the loudest voice in the room. But notice what happens when someone enters a space and doesn't immediately demand attention. People take note. There's something magnetic about restraint, about the person who listens before they speak. There's an air of mystery, of quiet confidence that draws others in. Because deep down, we all recognize that the one who speaks least often holds the most weight when they do. Consider the difference between reacting and responding. Most people react. They hear something, and before they've even processed it, they blurt out their thoughts, driven by emotion rather than wisdom. But those who understand the power of silence don't react, they respond. And that makes all the difference. A response is thoughtful, measured, intentional, it carries weight, it commands respect. The ability to remain silent when every fiber of your being wants to prove a point, to defend yourself, to add to the conversation. That's strength. That's discipline. Silence isn't just about words. It's about energy. It's about withholding unnecessary reactions, about not giving away your emotions so easily. When you're constantly expressing everything you feel, you become predictable, easy to manipulate. But when you master the art of silence, people don't know what you're thinking, they don't know your next move, and in that uncertainty, there is power. So this doesn't mean you never speak, it doesn't mean you suppress your thoughts or allow yourself to be walked over. No, quite the opposite. It means that when you do speak, it's intentional. It carries weight because you've taken the time to listen, to understand, to see what others have overlooked in their rush to be heard. And when you speak from that place, people listen. There's an old saying, a lion doesn't have to tell you it's a lion. It simply is. Strength, wisdom, confidence. These things don't need to be announced. They are felt. And the quieter you become, the more people will start paying attention when you do choose to speak. The world is full of noise, full of people talking over each other, desperate to be noticed. But the ones who rise above aren't the ones making the most noise. They're the ones who understand the value of silence. Because in that silence, there is space for everything you truly need. Clarity, patience, strength. And when you have those, everything else follows. So stay silent, watch, listen, and when the time is right, speak, not to prove, but to impact. Because when you do, the world will have no choice but to listen. Patience is one of the rarest qualities in the modern world. We live in an era of immediacy, instant gratification, instant validation, instant responses. People don't want to wait. They want results now. They chase, they push, they demand, believing that force and urgency are the keys to success. But in reality, the strongest individuals, the ones who truly understand how the world works, are those who know when to wait. And silence is what teaches them that. When you choose silence, you're making a conscious decision to step outside the chaos, to resist the need to react, to let things unfold naturally rather than trying to control every outcome. This isn't passivity. It's the highest form of discipline. Because to stay silent in the face of frustration, to hold back when every part of you wants to rush forward, that requires strength. It's easy to react. It's easy to throw yourself into situations before they're ready. What's difficult is mastering the patience to allow things to come to you in their own time. You see, the world has a natural rhythm to it. Every success, every breakthrough, every moment of clarity It all arrives when it's meant to, not when you try to force it. And when you're constantly chasing, constantly talking, constantly trying to make things happen on your timeline, you disrupt that rhythm. You create resistance where there should be flow. But silence, that allows things to align. It allows opportunities to come naturally rather than being squeezed into existence through sheer force. Strength isn't just about action, it's about restraint. It's about knowing when to move and when to wait. Consider the difference between a fool and a master. The fool acts impulsively, driven by his emotions, by his immediate desires. He speaks without thinking, rushes into situations without considering the long-term consequences. But the master, he waits, he watches. He knows that real power comes from understanding timing, from knowing when to hold back and when to strike. And when he does act, it's with precision, with certainty, because he's taken the time to let things settle, to see the full picture before making his move. People confuse silence with weakness because they associate strength with force. But the strongest individuals in history, those who have shaped the world, who have left a lasting impact, they weren't the ones constantly shouting, constantly pushing. They were the ones who knew the value of patience, who understood that some battles are won not by charging forward, but by waiting for the right moment. Think about it. Every great leader, every great thinker, every truly powerful person has had an extraordinary level of patience. They knew that silence isn't inaction, it's preparation. It's gathering your strength, observing the landscape, waiting for the right opportunity to present itself. And when it does, you don't hesitate. You move with absolute certainty because you've taken the time to understand exactly what needs to be done. Most people don't have the discipline for this. They act out of fear of missing out, fear of being overlooked, fear that if they don't constantly push, they'll fall behind. But what they don't realize is that in their desperation, they weaken themselves. They spread their energy too thin, wasted on battles that don't matter, burn themselves out before they ever reach where they were meant to go. Silence forces you to be still. And in that stillness, you develop patience. You develop the kind of strength that isn't reactive but deliberate, the kind of strength that doesn't waste energy proving itself, but simply is. And when you operate from that place, you become unstoppable. There's a saying that the strongest trees aren't the ones that grow the fastest, but the ones that take the longest to root. Because their strength isn't in their speed, but in their foundation. And the same is true for you. If you want to be truly powerful, truly resilient, you must first learn to wait, to let things unfold, to trust that in silence, everything you need will come to you exactly when it's meant to. So don't rush. Don't react. Let silence teach you patience, and let patience build your strength. Because when you master both, nothing, absolutely nothing, can shake you. Most people don't listen. They think they do, but in reality, they're just waiting for their turn to speak. They hear words, but they don't absorb meaning. They nod along, but their minds are already forming a response, eager to jump in, to add their own perspective, to make sure they're heard. And yet, the ones who truly excel in life, the ones who rise above, who command respect, who seem to understand things at a level others don't, are not the ones who talk the most. They are the ones who listen. Listening is not passive. It is not a weakness. It is not about staying quiet just to be polite. It is a skill, a discipline, a form of power that very few people ever develop. Because real listening requires humility. It demands that you set aside your own need to be right, your own urge to interject, and instead focus fully on what is being said. Not just the words, but the intention behind them, the emotions, the patterns, the things left unseen. And when you do that, when you truly listen, you begin to see what others miss. Most people go through life operating on the surface. They engage in conversations, but they don't extract any real value from them. They interact, but they don't connect. And because of that, they remain blind to the deeper truths that shape the world around them. But when you commit to listening, really listening, you gain access to a whole new level of understanding. You start to notice things others overlook. You hear what people are truly saying, even when their words suggest otherwise. You pick up on patterns, on unspoken fears, on hidden opportunities. And that's where the advantage lies. Because the more you understand, the more precise your actions become. You don't waste energy on unnecessary arguments. You don't make impulsive decisions based on half-truths. You don't speak just for the sake of speaking. You speak when it matters, when you have something of true value to say. And when you do, people listen because they know that your words are not empty noise, but the result of careful thought, of deep awareness. Look at the most respected figures in any field, whether it's business, politics, philosophy, or even personal relationships. They aren't the ones constantly talking, constantly trying to assert themselves. They are the ones who take their time, who observe, who let others reveal themselves first, and when they finally speak, it carries weight, not because they dominate conversations, but because they have taken the time to understand what actually needs to be said. Speaking less doesn't mean saying nothing. It doesn't mean becoming invisible. It means being intentional. It means valuing words enough not to waste them. And it means recognizing that true influence comes not from shouting the loudest, but from speaking with precision, with wisdom, with clarity. There's a reason why the person who listens the most tends to be the most respected in any room. It's because deep down, people don't just want to be talked at, they want to be understood. And when you are the one who listens, who truly understands, you become someone they trust, someone they turn to, someone whose words, when spoken, carry an undeniable impact. But to do that, you must first silence your own mind. You must resist the urge to always have the last word, to always add something, to always be heard. You must learn to be comfortable in silence, to let others speak without immediately inserting yourself. And you must cultivate the discipline to hold back, to process, to see the bigger picture before you respond. Because in the end, the world doesn't need more noise. It doesn't need more voices shouting to be heard. It needs more people who can listen, who can absorb, who can see beyond the surface and understand what's really going on. And those who develop that ability, those who learn to listen more and speak less, will find that they are the ones who truly hold power. Not because they demand it, not because they force it, but because when they finally choose to speak, the world stops to listen. Success is rarely loud. The people who achieve the most, the ones who seem to move through life with a quiet, undeniable force, are not the ones making the most noise. They are not constantly broadcasting their plans, explaining themselves, or seeking validation. Instead, they move in silence. They understand that real power doesn't need to announce itself. It simply exists. And because of that, it draws everything toward it. There is something compelling about a person who operates this way. You notice them not because they demand attention, but because they carry an energy that is impossible to ignore. They aren't trying to prove anything. They aren't trying to force success, and yet success seems to find them. They attract opportunities, respect, and influence, not by chasing, but by becoming the kind of person these things naturally gravitate toward. Silence, in this sense, is not just the absence of words. It is a strategy. It creates mystery, and mystery creates interest. When people don't know everything about you, when they can't predict your next move, they start paying closer attention. They wonder what you know that they don't. They feel the weight of your presence, even when you say nothing at all. And in a world where everyone is constantly talking, constantly oversharing, constantly trying to be noticed, the one who holds back becomes the one who stands out the most. But beyond perception, silence serves a deeper function. It creates space to think, to refine, to strategize. The person who speaks less has more time to observe, to gather information, to make better decisions. The one who is always talking, always seeking attention, is too busy projecting outward to truly see what's happening around them. And that's the difference between those who move with precision and those who move with chaos. Think about the most successful people you know. Are they constantly explaining themselves? Are they broadcasting their every move, seeking approval, making sure everyone knows what they're doing? Or are they the ones who stay quiet, who work in the background, who let their actions speak for them? The ones who seem to glide through life, making the right decisions at the right time without ever needing to justify themselves. This is because they've mastered something that most people never will, the ability to trust silence, to understand that they don't need to convince anyone of their worth, that success isn't something you demand, it's something you earn. And when you stop chasing it, when you stop trying to force it into existence, it starts coming to you. But that requires discipline. It requires resisting the urge to constantly explain yourself, to react to every criticism, to prove your point in every conversation. It means knowing when to stay quiet, even when every part of you wants to respond. It means understanding that the less you say, the more people wonder, the more they fill in the blanks with their own assumptions. And in doing so, you create an aura of significance, one that doesn't come from words, but from presence. This doesn't mean you never speak. It doesn't mean you hold back out of fear, insecurity, quite the opposite. It means you choose your words carefully. You recognize that talking for the sake of talking weakens your impact, that explaining yourself too much diminishes your authority, that constantly seeking attention makes you look like you don't deserve it, and so you wait. You let your results speak first. You let people see what you are capable of before you ever feel the need to say a word. And when you do speak, it matters. Because people have learned that when you say something, it's worth listening to. Because they know that you don't waste words, that you aren't trying to impress, that when you open your mouth, it's because you have something of real value to say. And that is the kind of power that cannot be ignored. So stay silent. Let others rush. Let them talk. Let them try to force success into their lives. You don't need to do that. You don't need to chase. Because when you move in silence, when you focus on becoming rather than proving, everything you seek will eventually find you. Emotions are powerful. They can push you forward or pull you under. They can make you act with clarity or drive you into chaos. And in a world that constantly provokes, constantly pressures, constantly demands a reaction, the ability to remain silent, to hold yourself together when everything around you is designed to make you lose control, is one of the greatest strengths you can develop. Most people are ruled by their emotions. They react instantly without thought, without strategy. Someone insults them, they fire back. They feel slighted, they let their anger dictate their next move. They experience fear and they allow it to shape their decisions. But here's the problem. Every time you react impulsively, you give away your power. You allow the world to control you instead of the way around. And the more you give in to that impulse, the more predictable you become, the more easily you can be manipulated, the more you fall into the very traps set by those who understand what you do not. Silence changes that. It creates a gap between stimulus and response. It forces you to pause, to step outside of the immediate emotion and see things clearly. And that moment of silence, that fraction of restraint, is often the difference between success and failure, between strength and weakness. Think about it. How many times in your life have you said something in the heat of the moment that you later regretted? How many times have you let frustration dictate your words only to realize later that you misunderstood the situation? How many times have you reacted in anger only to make things worse? This is what happens when you don't control your emotions, they control you. But silence teaches discipline. It forces you to process before you respond. It gives you time to let the initial wave of emotion pass, to step back and analyze the situation without the distortion of anger, fear, or frustration. And when you can do that, when you can hold your tongue when others expect an outburst, when you can stay composed while those around you crumble, that's when you start to separate yourself. That's when you start to see the game for what it really is. There's a reason why the most dangerous individuals, the ones who command real respect, are not the ones who shout, who lash out, who show their emotions at every turn. They are the ones who remain calm, calculated, unreadable, because they know that the moment they expose their emotions, they expose their weaknesses. They give others a way in. But when you control your emotions, when you refuse to be provoked, when you don't react in the way people expect, you become untouchable. This is not about suppression. It's not about ignoring your feelings or pretending they don't exist. It's about mastering them. about making sure they serve you instead of sabotaging you. It's about knowing when to express them and when to hold back, when to speak and when to stay silent. And most importantly, it's about understanding that silence is not just the absence of words. It is a tool, a weapon, a source of immense power in a world where most people are slaves to their own impulse. The strongest individuals are not those who never feel emotion, but those who have learned how to navigate it without letting it dictate their actions. They don't react, they respond. They don't explode, they assess. They don't let the world control them, they control themselves. And that level of discipline, that ability to sit with your emotions, to understand them before acting on them, that is what separates those who lead from those who follow. Because in the end, it's not the loudest person in the room who holds the most power, it's the one who doesn't need to prove anything. The one who can take the hits and remain standing. The one who can stare chaos in the face and remain unmoved. That is real strength. And once you have it, nothing, no insult, no setback, no provocation can ever shake you again. There's a certain wisdom in knowing when to act and when to step back. Most people spend their lives forcing things, forcing relationships, forcing opportunities, forcing success, as if sheer effort and noise alone can bend reality to their will. And yet, the ones who seem to move through life with the most ease, the ones who achieve the most, aren't the ones who push the hardest. They are the ones who understand that some things are meant to come in their own time. They know that silence, patience, and trust in the process will take them further than force ever could. When you constantly push, constantly try to manipulate every outcome, you create resistance. You introduce stress, desperation, and tension into everything you do. People sense it. They pull away. Opportunities slip through your fingers precisely because you're holding on too tightly. But when you step back, when you allow things to unfold without the need to control every detail, you create space for the right things to find you. It's not passivity, it's wisdom. It's understanding that life has a rhythm, and the more you fight it, the more you struggle. Silence is a key part of this. It teaches you to listen, to observe, to trust that what is meant for you will come, not through force, but through alignment. It allows you to make better decisions because you're not acting out of fear or impatience. It allows you to see the bigger picture, to let go of things that were never meant for you in the first place. And when you do that, you stop wasting energy on what you stop chasing. And instead, you start attracting. The strongest, most successful people are not frantic. They are composed. They move with certainty, not because they control everything, but because they trust themselves enough to know that when the time is right, they will act. And in that quiet confidence, everything they need finds its way to them. So let go of the need to force. Stay silent when silence is needed. Trust that what is meant for you will arrive, not through struggle, but through the quiet certainty that you are exactly where you need to be. Silence is not emptiness, it is not weakness, it is not inaction. It is the foundation of patience, the source of wisdom, the mark of discipline, and the path to true strength. In a world that constantly demands your reaction, your voice, your attention, the ability to hold back, to observe, to listen, to wait is a rare and powerful thing. When you choose silence, you cultivate patience and resilience. You learn to listen more and speak less, absorbing the knowledge that others miss. You master emotional control, refusing to be a puppet to your impulses. You allow success to come to you rather than chasing it with desperation. And most importantly, you learn to trust life's timing, understanding that what is meant for you will arrive, not through force, but through alignment. The world rewards those who know when to act and when to wait, those who don't waste words, who don't waste energy, who move with quiet certainty. So step back from the noise. Resist the urge to prove yourself. Let your silence speak for you, because when you do, when you master the power of restraint, you will find that everything you have been seeking has been moving toward you all along.